Charging stations are great as long as they work, right? Yep. And that's what we're talking about today on GreenCars The Podcast. Welcome to GreenCars The Podcast, where we talk about all things involving hybrid, plug-in hybrid, and all-electric vehicles. I'm Trish Glose.
And I'm Dave Nichols. Today we're going to dive into the tumultuous world of charging stations. When they work and charge your EV, they're great. But when they're not working 100%, well, it's frustrating, and it's a big reason that people are staying away from buying an EV. We're hoping to answer some questions about charging stations in general, and Trish, I know that you've had some experience with this.
A little bit. When I was driving the Ford Mustang Mach-E, as many of us know, I did have some range anxiety, but then I had that charging anxiety. I wasn't quite sure, where to charge it, how to charge it, and they're not as easily to spot as maybe a gas station, right? You have to do a little bit of research. And then a lot of times when I pulled up to these charging stations, they were broken or they were slower than I anticipated. So yes, a lot of headaches involving charging stations. And I get it. It's frustrating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also, when you're getting used to driving an EV, it's a whole new world that you're entering, and that it involves charging as well. Wall Street Journal reporter Joanna Stern recently posted an article, and she did her homework, visiting more than 120 EV chargers in the Los Angeles area, and she lists the top 3 reasons why they're broken.
This was pretty ugly. Many of the chargers she rolled up to were broken, or they didn't connect to the vehicle, or they didn't accept payment. So basically, yes, they did not work. And keep in mind, Los Angeles County has more DC fast chargers than any other place in the country.
Right. And the reporter tested nearly 130 chargers and found that there were problems with about 40% of them.
Jeez.
That may have something to do with the fact that in some cases, the charger has trouble communicating with the EV. In her particular EV, this is one she borrowed. It was a brand new Rivian R1T, which had the latest software, and that may have played into the problem.
Right. They weren't talking to each other.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the main problems she encountered was that the chargers were just tagged as being out of order. Out of 126 that she tested, 27% said they were out of order.
Yikes. Now, I don't math, but that cannot be good. How do you just not give up at that point, right?
Well, our producer suggests we all just go back to skateboards. Okay. But I think one of the things that would really help is if you charge at home. Because you charge at home, you probably only need to charge once a week, and you're set for the week, as long as you're not going long distances.
Okay.
At least what she found was if it said out of order, she knew how to handle that. She'd just go on to the next one.
It was clear cut for her at that point. Yeah. I guess, though, what isn't clear is when you pull up to a charging station, you think everything is great, and then you get that error message.
Yeah. And that brings us to her number 2 issue, which is payment. Nearly 10% of the stalls Joanne visited had payment issues of one kind or another, very specific credit card issues, the charger asking for cash when maybe there's no way to actually insert cash. Things like that. And a deeper dive shows that payment technology in these charging stations is very different than the station's technology.
Exactly. So the charging station itself has its own hardware and software going on. Then there's a whole different payment technology all in this one little box that you pull up to.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't know any of that unless you attempted to charge.
And we just don't have time for that. We're busy people.
We don't. And that's why there's a lot of frustration around charging stations. But here's a tip. Pay by charging app, which I know you have had some experience with that as well.
Yes. So very interesting. As many of our listeners and viewers know, when you pull up, if you haven't been to this particular charging station, you have to download the app on your phone. And that makes it pretty simple to walk you through the steps. I guess finding a charging station in a different city with an app you're unfamiliar with, though, that can be a whole different experience.
Right. And we haven't even gotten to her 3rd headache around charging stations, which is connection issues. So even if the payment works, sometimes you get serious connection issues where the charging station doesn't connect to your vehicle.
Cool. I'll just stick with my Jetta on this one. There's got to be some good news here.
There is, and it's coming from Tesla. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But right now, DOT is releasing millions of dollars to repair charging stations across America. And there are companies attempting to make all this better for drivers.
That is good news.
Here's a bit of a clip from Joanne's Wall Street Journal story.
To find out why this is all such a broken mess, I met up with Charger Help, an LA-based company that attempts to clean up the mess.
So you fix chargers.
Yes.
There are a lot of broken chargers.
Yeah, no, we fix a lot of chargers in LA, especially with our LA technicians that we have here.
Sergio, one of the Charger Help technicians, walked me through fixing one stall.
It shows that it has a fault here. So a power cycle the unit, we can go ahead and hit the breaker to shut it off.
Yep, as simple as turning it off and turning it on again.
So we're getting the green prompt lights, which means the charging station is back online.
But most repairs are not that simple because, again, the car and the charger are computers that have to communicate with each other.
This is the whole motherboard here, which sometimes goes bad and we have to replace.
Sergio explained that this set of cables connect from the motherboard to the charger to communicate with the car. It's that handshake I mentioned before. The charger tells the car how much voltage it can send, and the car says, hey, here's how much I can accept. But that's where things can break down.
Sometimes the network where you're at, whichever area you're in, is poor. So you have to try it multiple times so it actually ends up working. If you notice, when you try it like the third or fourth time, it ends up actually working.
And remember, the DC fast chargers I tested have to communicate with lots of different types of electric vehicles, which is why things can get so much more complicated than on Tesla's network.
So it's one station trying to figure out how to communicate with multiple different types of firmware, whereas if you have a Tesla system, it's a vertically integrated, where they have a car, a station, and a payment system that's all together.
And there you go. We've talked about this before. These are basically computers just trying to communicate and talk to each other. Yeah.
Yep. And starting this year, Tesla will be opening up its charging network to other electric cars from Ford, Rivian, GM. Soon, those car companies will adopt Tesla's NACS charging port. And along with that, charging stations are getting better. The technology is improving every day.
Right. Very excited. It's going to make a huge difference. I'm also very excited for today's expert, who I'm just going to go ahead and call an expert, right? 100%. He knows what he's talking about when it comes to charging stations. But first, we want to take a look at what's up in the latest EV news. According to Reuters, United States Transportation Department is awarding nearly $150 million for projects in about 20 states. This will repair or replace about 4,500 existing electric vehicle charging ports. This comes as another line of awards to boost EV charging. There are new rules coming from the Biden administration in the coming months that could boost EV sales.
And keeping with our electric vehicle charging news, another company is targeting Michigan for operations. German EV charging company EcoG plans to invest $14.4 million and create a North American headquarters in a Detroit neighborhood close to Ford Motors' Michigan Central project, which comes with a price tag of roughly $800 million, according to a memo from the Michigan Economic Development Corp.
And not trying to get too political, but Republicans and some Democrats tried to repeal a waiver issued by the Biden administration. It would allow federally funded EV chargers be made from imported iron and steel. Biden administration wants to invest nearly $8 billion with a B to build electric vehicle charging stations across the country. I'm not sure about you, Dave, but I feel like we should bring in our expert today to flush some of this out for both of us.
Let's do it.
And that expert would be Paul Scott. Hello, Paul Scott. We're so excited to have you here with us today.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to talk electric vehicles with people who are knowledgeable.
Well, before we get into charging stations, because that's really what this episode is about, let's chat about your background a bit. When did your journey with electric vehicles begin?
It was back in 2002. I had just installed solar on my house, coincidentally on my 50th birthday. That was a nice little present. And we had just heard about electric cars kind of in general. You could see them around Santa Monica here and there, the EV1s, the RAV4s. And so we went out and we bought a RAV4. At that time, you could buy one instead of leasing it. That was kind of a fluke. but we got one. And so we were running our house and our car on sunlight at that point. And that was December 21st, 2002. So since then, I've been running my house, my cars, and my motorcycles on clean solar energy. And it's and the solar system, by the way, paid itself off in about 2010.
But your journey really developed after that, right? As I understand, you were a founding member of Plug in America.
Right. Well, right after we got the car, we found out that there were, a couple of thousand people in California who were driving these cars, and there was a big political fight going on at the time, and we joined in right away, started organizing people because we found that the car makers were taking the cars back and literally crushing them. So a fellow by the name of Chris Payne had his EV1 taken back, and he said, I'm going to make a documentary about this because this is wrong what they're doing. So we started collaborating with him. Whenever we were going to put on a protest, we called Chris, and he'd show up with a camera and start filming it. And over about 3 years, he made a film called Who Killed the Electric Car? And so right about that time, we had stopped the crushing of all the cars we could. We saved about 800 of the Toyota RAVs. We didn't save any of the EV1s. They crushed all of those. And so at that point, we decided we would form an organization that would be fighting to get car makers to start building electric cars again. And so we all met at somebody's house, and we formed a group called Plug in America. And that's how it got started.
Well, and so this all happened before you moved to Santa Monica?
Correct. Yeah, I had been living in Eugene for some 23 years and moved down here in 98. So I was working in visual effects at that time. And what happened was after about 3 years here, I got diagnosed with bladder cancer, and I had just gotten married a second time. And so this was kind of a big hit. And so I ended up quitting the visual effects industry, and that's when I thought, I thought I might die. So I thought, well, maybe I should leave something as a legacy. And I thought leaving solar on the roof of my house to generate clean energy would be a good legacy. So that's how I got involved in this whole thing, was through the cancer. And I was a catalyst. It wasn't particularly a pleasant catalyst, but it worked. And that's how I got started.
Well, and so you're involved with this group trying to tackle charging station challenges. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Santa Monica has been very proactive in all kinds of environmental areas. When I got my electric car in 2002, there was already several chargers around town, and they were all free. They were installed by the city, and they were all level 2. Back then, it was called small paddle inductive. And you had this paddle that you pulled out of the charger. It made this squeaking noise that we all knew very well. And you put it in the front of your car, and you were charging at 6 kilowatts. And there were like maybe 200 or 300 of these cars around California. And that was basically all the production electric cars in the world at that time. So the city was very good, as I say, in installing these chargers. And then over time, as new electric cars started coming out, like a full decade after that, they started increasing the number of chargers. And then they had somebody appointed at the city, an employee whose job it was to do that. But she had her hands full. So they appointed a committee to help her locate sites for chargers. And so they asked me to be on that committee as well. So that's how I got involved in that.
Well, in ballpark, about how many chargers are there in Santa Monica today? Do you know?
Yeah, level 2, there's about 150, give or take, maybe 170 now. They're about to let a contract this summer that should double and possibly triple that. So we haven't installed a lot of new ones over the last couple of years. There have been snafus with the budget. The city had issues. But there's a lot of pent-up demand because there's literally 5-10 times as many EVs today as there were 2 years ago. I mean, they're really coming on fast now. So we need a lot more. There are quite a few at level 3. We've got, I would guess, 15 level 3 for non-Tesla. And then Tesla installed, they've got 3 different supercharger areas in Santa Monica now, one with only 8. That was the original one. They put in another one near the freeway that has about 15. And then in the central part of the town, they installed 62 level 3 chargers under solar canopy. And it's a beautiful place, beautiful place.
Now, you talked about this a little bit, but let's go back to that documentary that you were involved in with our good friend Alexandra Paul. What was it like being involved with that, really this fight to save the EV?
You know, they were exciting times. It was very frustrating because literally we were a dozen or so people going up against the entire auto industry, the entire oil industry, and the federal government. This was the George Bush times. And so it was very frustrating because we didn't win a lot. You know, we lost basically every time. But what we did do is we got the word out that there were viable electric cars available, at least they had been available, and they were being taken back by the manufacturers and destroyed because the car makers did not want to make these cars. And the state of California had basically forced them to. So they overturned that law that forced them to make the electric cars, and they took them back and crushed them. And then Chris made the movie about it. And we were telling anybody who would listen about this, and you know, we had a few thousand people listening to us. But when Chris's movie came out in 2006, all of a sudden, hundreds of thousands of people heard about this, either saw the movie in the theater or got the DVD afterwards. And I was going around for years afterwards, taking the DVD to colleges, universities, schools, anybody who would play it. And then I would do a question and answer afterwards. So I saw that movie a lot. But that's what got the word out. Now, and then, of course, you guys know what Tesla was doing all along. Around 2003, Elon Musk and J.B. Straubel heard about this little T0 that these guys had made out in Diamond Bar, and they drove that, and that's what convinced them that, oh, this technology is viable. And so Elon started putting money into that little company. He basically got in, he and JB got into Tesla with the other 3 guys who started that. And essentially they weren't doing it correctly. So Elon took over and drove it home.
Well, and so Paul, talking about the documentary, what does that mean to you today?
The documentary was super important. I got to say, we were getting our butts kicked, and trying to get the word out about electric cars. You can't force a $1 trillion industry like the auto industry to do anything unless you are, several governments acting together, or your Tesla, successful Tesla. We were losing badly, and it was getting very sad. And we knew the promise. We knew that. We were running our house and our car on sunlight. We knew that was viable and that everybody could do that. And we knew what that meant to the world in terms of climate change, in terms of wars over oil, in terms of oil money controlling our political system. It was very, very important that this succeed. And when Tesla came along and succeeded and forced the entire global auto industry to go electric, that made it really satisfying for me. But we were really getting our butts kicked, and that movie that really changed a lot. And then Tesla came along. See, without the movie, Tesla, I don't know if you know how close they were to failing at many stages all the way up till 2018. When the Roadster came out, if you've seen the film, you see how hard that was for Tesla to make that successful at all. And it barely did. And that funded them enough to get the Model S out. And the Model S was, it had problems, but it was also car of the year its first year out. But again, Tesla was barely surviving. And numerous times they almost just lost it and went under. And had they gone under, we would not have anything today. So having Tesla be successful, the reason they were is that the movie and our efforts, we seeded the ground. We let enough people know that, oh my God, this technology does work. So that when Tesla came out with these cars, there was a market ready to buy all those Roadsters. And in 2012, when the Model S came out, there was a market ready to buy that Model S. And they were all purchased. as fast as Tesla could make them. That's why Tesla has never had to advertise, because everybody is aware of the car through all kinds of media, and because people who like cars realize it's a really nice car. So that's where we are today. It was clear up until 2018 that Tesla almost failed, getting that Model 3 out. That was the last time they had trouble. Since then, now they've got buckets of cash, and everybody in the world wants to drive a Tesla now.
Well, Paul, I want to get back to charging stations just a bit. What challenges, if any, are facing the city of Santa Monica right now when it comes to charging stations? Siting
them, quite frankly, is it. And the siting involves, you've got to have enough electric power there. So you're working closely with the utilities. We work closely with the utilities on every site that we recommend. So if we like the site, you've got ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act. So you've got to deal with ADA concerns. So a lot of times you will have a parking lot that maybe that would work, but the ADA drives it into a situation where we can't use it. It gets complex, but it's very problematic having the ADA to deal with. But there are quite a few places that do work. And if they're really good for, in terms of location, then you've got to make sure that the electric power is sufficient. And that's where you have to bring the utility in, and they'll run it there. If it's not there already, they'll make it happen. But of course, if they need to upgrade the electric system a lot, it can drive the costs up quite a bit. So you have those kinds of things to deal with. But by and large, we don't have a lot of pushback like we did in the early days. In the early days, we'd say, hey, we want to make these 10 parking spots electric only. People would push back. Where am I going to park my gas car? And so we had to deal with that a lot. But nowadays, so many people want chargers, and the media is pushing that the only reason the masses aren't taking up electric cars is because of charging. So everybody knows that we need more charging, and they're kind of getting out of our way, or they're making it easy for us. But still, finding locations, it can be particularly hard once you've got all the easy ones done. And now we're trying to add more. So in a parking garage, we have 30 chargers that we've had for 6-7 years. And that's been really nice to have 30 chargers. You go there pretty much, especially in the non-peak times, and you can almost always find a charger. But they're going to turn that one into 150 chargers, this summer. So that 30 charge parking garage is going to be 150 charger parking garage. And parking garages are really good because you can put in 50, 100, 200. And that one has a big solar array on the roof too. So parking garages are probably going to be incorporated into charging infrastructure really fast.
And Paul, do you have any advice for people that are getting kind of fed up with EV chargers?
So the only ones who really should have a problem are the people who park on the street. If you park, if you have a single family home, you don't have an issue. You could just install it. You've got the electric power at home. You got either a parking space, a driveway or a garage, so you can install a charger. That's not an issue. If you live in multifamily, apartments or condos, here in California, we passed laws that said it is you have the legal right, if you have a dedicated parking space, to install a charger. So you have to pay for it, and depending on where your parking space is relative to where your electric panel is, that might be too expensive. So in a lot of cases, it's too expensive, but in a lot of cases, it's not. And you have the legal right to install one. So that's helped quite a few people. Not a lot of people know about that law. I've written articles about it to try to get the word out, but it's still most people in California who rent an apartment think they cannot get a charger because they rent an apartment when they really could if they looked into it. So that's an issue. But quite frankly, beyond that, unless you park on the street, those are the people who have the biggest gripe. And for them, it's fast charging or workplace charging. Workplace charging is another one that the feds are really pushing. We're really pushing. And you can put level 1 at a workplace because level 1, you're there all day and it's super cheap to install. You can put in 100 plugs for very little money, and just everybody has a plug that they plug into. Or you could put in a lot of level 2. It's going to cost a little more, but it's faster. But workplace charging is really helping a lot of people who do park on the street, want to drive electric. But if you don't have workplace charging, you park on the street, then you got to use fast charging. And fast charging, you stop there for 20, 30 minutes once a week, and you read or whatever, check your email, and you get it done, and you're good for the week. So you just have to have a car that will do fast charging.
Paul, I know you've done a lot of work in the city when it comes to charging stations. Do you feel like the city of Santa Monica got it right when laying out this plan for charging stations?
Initially, absolutely. Yeah. Where they started to go off the rails was when Tesla came in and wanted to put in this 62 station supercharger. And we really needed it because it was right around 2020. The Model 3 was really taking off. The Model Y was just coming out. And I went into the meeting and I said, you have no idea what's coming. These people want these cars. And a lot of them live in this particular neighborhood. There were over 10,000 apartments and condos. And most of those people, it's still somewhat problematic for them to charge, or they were just unaware of it. And so having this supercharger there would have helped a lot. The city council stopped it, and we're going to, not let Tesla install. And so I blew a gasket and wrote an op-ed for the local newspaper, and I castigated the city council and one councilor in particular, who was the green guy on the council. He was the environmentalist, and I named him and said, this guy still drives a gas car, buys gasoline, burns gasoline. He should not be even talking about this. So I embarrassed him. He literally resigned 3 months later from the city council, and he'd been on there for 20 years. So anyway, the city council at the next meeting changed their mind and allowed Tesla to install. And when Tesla installed that supercharger, they did it in 2 stages. They did 30 stalls, and then they did the rest of them. And the 30 stalls, when they opened, there was lines waiting for them. That's how much demand was pent up. And then when the other side opened up, now it's like during the day, it'll be 70, 80% full all day long until the evening. So it was really, really needed. And it's great because that is like a gas station for a gas car. You go there and you see people there, and they're there 15, 20, 30 minutes at the most. So you're not there that long, and you're good for the whole week. So that's what will change things for people who park on the street. If you park on the street, you just go to the Tesla supercharger and you're done. It's real easy.
Paul, before we let you go, let's back up just a bit. What was your first EV, and when was that? When did you get it?
Yeah, it was a Toyota RAV4. I got it on December 21st, 2002. And it was a great car, 100-mile range. We had hardly any chargers. I mean, you're talking maybe 50 chargers in the entire state of California. And I'm not exaggerating that. So you knew where the chargers were. And if you wanted to go from Los Angeles to Santa Barbara, there was one charger in between and one charger in Santa Barbara. And you had to hope they were working, because if they weren't working, you'd go there and you couldn't get back. So the early days were a little crazy, and but they were fun, and we were excited because we knew the end game was fully electric fleet with solar and wind energy powering it. So now we see it coming, and it's coming really fast. And so it makes my heart feel really good that the work we did resulted in the end game being electric fleet. And the rest of my life is going to be spent killing the sale of gas cars. And that's it, because between now and when internal combustion ends around 2035, there's going to be some 700 million internal combustion vehicles made, and that's globally, of course. So we want to keep that as low as possible. Hopefully, if we can stop people from buying new gas cars, maybe we'll keep that down to under 500 million. And that would be good. And once we hit 2035 and they stop making gas cars, the existing billion or so internal combustion vehicles globally will age out over the following decade. So less than 25 years from now, chances are the entire global ground fleet will be electric and running on an evergreening grid. So, the future is going to be bright. I'm not going to be around that long, but I'm going to see most of it happen. And every single day I look at the numbers and I'm very excited about how things are taking off for electric cars now.
Well, so Paul, what are you driving today?
Well, I have a Model 3, and I bought it. I was down there early, like 5 a.m, the first day you could order them. And so I bought it really early in 18, and I drove it a few times, and immediately rented it out because I didn't need the car. I just wanted, Tesla to get one more sale. So I rented it out, and I gave the guy a good deal on it as long as I could use it, whenever I wanted to go long distance. And of course, I used it once, and then the pandemic hit and I didn't go anywhere. And I finally went up to Eugene for the World Championships a couple of years ago. And that was an extremely satisfying trip because, it was free supercharging the entire way because my car, for some reason, got free supercharging. And so that was a really nice perk. It's just so easy to drive a Tesla long distance because the car tells you where to go and how long you're going to charge and when it's ready to go again. Everything is done for you, and it's a very safe car. So I love it. And he wanted to buy it from me, but I think I'm going to keep it. I like having that free supercharging, so I'm just going to let a neighbor use it. And I just use my motorcycle every day. So, but having the car at my location would just make it a little easier if I needed to use it. So.
And your motorcycle?
Zero SRS. It's electric motorcycle. They're made in Santa Cruz, California. I can hit 60 and 3 flat, and I do that a lot. I race cars, so I go from Santa Monica to Malibu on PCH, Pacific Coast Highway, every weekend. And in California, we can split lanes legally. So you split lanes, you get up to the front at a red light, which is a excellent perk. Splitting lanes is the bomb, man, let me tell you. And so you get up to the front at the light, and there's some young buck on a Ducati, 1000cc Ducati, and you nod helmets, and I just watch for the yellow light. And when the light's yellow, I'm just settled in. And when it goes green, you make sure that the conditions are right, and I just pop it wide open and hold on, and I win every time.
Love it. I love it. Thank you, Paul. We so appreciate your story, and we would love to have you back on the podcast down the road at some point.
Sure. Yeah. As long as I'm around, because that's all I'm doing is trying to get people to stop buying gas cars and switch to electric. So anything I can do to help that.
Thanks so much, Paul.
Sure. Thank you.
Pop it and hold it.
Yep. That's what we do here at Green Cars.
That's our motto. What a feisty guy.
Yeah.
Feisty, very passionate, right?
Indeed. Yeah.
Well, Dave, let's wrap up today's episode with a little dive into our mailbag.
Let's do.
Our first question comes from Stella Stevens from Sacramento, California. It seems there are a lot of problems with the charging stations themselves. Why aren't the companies fixing the issues at a faster pace?
Well, Stella, help is on the way. For instance, EVgo has started its Renew program, which identifies faulty chargers for updates or repairs. Since January, they have upgraded or repaired 120 charging stations, and they have cut the time it takes to repair a station in half.
Wow.
ChargePoint and Blink Charging tell us that the technology is getting better and better as we transition away from first-generation chargers.
That is good news. Let's take a look at some of the comments we're getting on social media. We've received a good amount on one of our Instagram posts about range anxiety. Remember that topic way back when? Yarn Diva 11 writes, I do have range charge anxiety at times. When my phone battery dies, I'm not stranded somewhere. That said, after having an EV for a while, I know how to adjust driving to add miles and where chargers are on longer trips I take often. And then we hear from Guitar Guru, who writes, many like myself don't have a place to charge a vehicle overnight. That's what keeps me from even considering one, which we hear occasionally, right? From people who maybe don't have a spot to charge. Great comments. Thank you, everyone. We'd love to hear from you. If you're watching these episodes, drop us a comment on our YouTube channel or leave us a comment on our social media platforms. Dave, I'm curious, how do you combat charging anxiety? Do you even have charging anxiety?
Well, see, for me, it comes down to charging at home overnight. Most people don't drive that much. You might find that you could charge overnight once or twice a week, and that takes care of your normal needs, right? If you go out of town, you find charging stations along the route in advance, so you know where you're going. You have a good idea where you're going to stop to charge. There's an excellent ChargePoint has an excellent map that shows you all the charging stations on the way. You can find that at GreenCars.com.
I love it. Planning ahead. I also love a look ahead. So what's coming up on GreenCars, the podcast?
Yes. We will look into the difference between hybrid and plug-in hybrid cars, explain how electric cars work, and talk about the benefits of driving green. We might even put you, Trish, behind the wheel of some of the latest and coolest EVs for a road trip or two.
Let's do it. I'm down. I love to pop it and hold it.
This is what I've heard. Yeah.
Don't forget, when it comes to EVs, stay informed and stay charged. We'll see you next time. Follow us at GreenCars HQ. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Email us, thepodcast@greencars.com.